As an artist, Pussy Party has given me the platform and the skills to be able to explore my femininity as a man, as a queer individual.
I have never felt so safe to explore my creativity, my expression, my sexuality, and my feminist in a party space the way that I have at Pussy Party.
Pussy Party to me is a really progressive party that I have been watching online, and it's always been a party that I think that has the ethoses that should be implemented in all club nights, and I think that they're so far ahead of the game in terms of inclusivity.
The very act of dancing and partying is political.
So when I actually got to play the party, March 14th, it was something that I was really excited about. Like set-wise, I had friends that I played before, so I knew that I'd be able to be as free as I wanted, be able to play what I wanted. I knew the music that I was going to play was going to be well received.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Atia Khan. I am a writer and journalist based out of, from Johannesburg, but based in Cape Town. And I also DJ and run a collective called Future Nostalgia, which has been going for the last 8 years, based in Cape Town. I'm super excited tonight to have some incredible women joining me on the panel, all DJs in their own right, event organizers, activists. And so I'll briefly introduce them, and then we would love to hear from them. The videos were great. Thank you. Thank you so much. But yeah, it's good to be in the company of kindred spirits, and I'm so happy to meet all of you. So we have Akati Khasiani from the Nest Collective based in Nairobi in Kenya. And then we've got Lisa Mole based in the Netherlands. And we've got Colleen Belchin from Joburg, based in Joburg, where I'm at the moment. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining me tonight, and everyone at Artfluence for having us. You know, I think that you would say it better than I would, so I'm just going to ask you all to slowly, gently introduce us to yourselves. Just who are you? What is it that you do? And where are you? Or, well, what is it that you're involved in before we move on to the parties? And that, cool. I'm going to ask Akati to start, please.
Thank you so much, Atia, and thank you, Artfluence, for having me here tonight. It's such a pleasure, as Atia says, to meet kindred spirits, familiar faces, and new. And my name is Akati Khasiani. I'm a Kenyan woman. I'm a member of the Nest Collective, which is a multidisciplinary squad based here in Nairobi. And we work primarily in film, music, fashion, and literature. I am a DJ, I'm a writer, I'm a musician, and I'm learning music production. I'm also a filmmaker, and I'm here in my capacity as one of the executive producers of Strictly Silk, which we'll get into as we proceed. Thank you so much, Atia.
Thank you so much. Lisa, could you let us know a little bit about who you are and your background?
Yes, thank you, Atia. My name is Lisa. I'm from the Netherlands, and at the moment I work as a club programmer and a radio programmer for our online community radio station Stranded FM here in Utrecht, what's in the middle of the Netherlands. And I also organize and curate parties and several other events in the city, but in the rest of the Netherlands as well. And I'm also DJing, as you already mentioned, and I'm also a resident for the Niet Normaal Collective, which is a party that started up in 2017. It was all queer and for women. And the Niet Normaal party is also based on the Safe Space Party Praxis, where I can hopefully tell you more about later.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Colleen, just a brief intro.
Hi, thank you so much for your intro, Atia, and lovely to meet everyone. So I'm also a DJ. Some of my best friends are DJs. So I'm a DJ, I'm a booker, promoter, co-founder of Pussy Party, which we are here to chat about. So with Pussy Party, we do DJ workshops for women and for queer people. We also do mentoring for women and queer people getting into events and production. We do some consulting about safer spaces. We assist mainstream events to book more diverse, gender diverse lineups. And yeah, I'm a party girl at heart. I'm a music lover, and I'm super interested to see what we uncover in this chat. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think it's really cool also that there's so many overlaps in kind of what we do, which is you don't only, we don't only play at parties or events, but we're also on the organizing side, which also comes down to, you know, creating lineups and all these various elements that are involved from an organizational capacity. Also, as a writer, Akati, you also understand that, you know, that's another level, you know, that's brought into the music research. So just to go into it a little bit deeper, Colleen, you did touch on it a little bit more with yours, but basically my follow-up question was, if you can describe, for those out there who don't know, or for people who are just being introduced to us, if you can describe what is the event or the party or the space or the platform that you run, and just a little bit of history about that. So for instance, as I mentioned earlier, the collective that I'm a part of, Future Nostalgia, has been going for the last 8 years. We are, you know, we kind of a community-based listening session that revolves around records and those kinds of things, you know. And so, yeah, I would love to, I'm going to just go in the same order again. Akati, if you can tell us a little bit more about, well, I think also from the Nest Collective, but also Strictly Silk as well.
Okay, sure. The Nest Collective started in 2011. As I said, we're based here in Nairobi. And it's kind of interesting that it did start as a community gathering space for artists, makers, interested parties, and people who we call misfits, who may have been struggling with, you know, getting along. Then we evolved into a collective working with artistic production. And that's a very, very brief summary of the Nest Collective. But in 2018, one of the projects that we were working on was a music project, part of which was DJ training and part of which was music production. So we did an album and an EP. The Nest is a mixed gender collective, and we were having discussions about what kind of events or clubs or places would we want our music played in, or would we want to perform at, and the issues that women and queer persons face in club culture or in public space at all were central to that discussion. And from that is what Strictly Silk was born. So we decided to have an event that centered safety and joy for women and non-binary persons. It's an exclusive event. We have only women and non-binary attendees, but we also extended that thought to the entertainer lineup. So whether we're having live performances or DJ sets, we recruit along the same lines of thought. All our vendors, all our suppliers, and that includes security, food, it includes communications, it includes, you know, who we're buying our tents from. We seek out women-led businesses, we seek out businesses led by queer persons and non-binary people, and we center them as participants, as providers, and as attendees. Initially, it was a party. As you saw in our video, we had a couple of outdoor events in Nairobi, which were the best, you know, when we could be outside and under the stars at night. We then also had a couple of indoor events, one here in Nairobi and one in Amsterdam, where we were lucky to work with Latoya, among some other really excellent Dutch and American DJs. And following that, and also with the events in the world last year, we've been rethinking our approach and seeing how can we meet our community where they are. And this year we've been able to launch Strictly Silk at Home, which is our digital offering. And it's a kind of multi-platform experience where we showcase conversations, we have podcasts, we have social media takeovers, video. And our interest is in, one, hosting conversations that focus on issues that are relevant to our community, as well as creating kind of an online gathering space where we can say, yes, it's the internet and everyone is here, but in this space, we're still trying to keep that same energy of care and gentleness that we offered at our physical events. Yes, so that is Strictly Silk.
Okay, that's super cool. I want to get more into that as we go along in the second round, but I'm going to ask Lisa to go next. If you could talk a little bit about, well, as you say, from the radio station, from the radio show, but also from the Niet Normaal collective. Basically, just what were those events kind of about, or how did they come about, or just the history a little bit about what they like.
All right. The radio where I work from, Stranded FM, is almost 5 years old, and it started as a platform for people in a little corner of the city where they just can come together and play their music. But when it grew bigger and it became more known for the people of the city, more people wanted to play there as well. The team also got more various. So for 2 years now, 2 years ago, they asked me to do the program. And since then, we've broadened up the program as well. So there are not only music shows anymore, but also talk shows and live music shows as well. There was not that much as well when they started, but we also do more events in the city and do collaborations with other institutes in the city. Since kind of the same as Akari told, so how can you how can we do the radio without events if we're not able to organize events in these crazy times? So that's how we take a sharp look at our program, and then we were like, okay, we can do a lot of more things with this and get people from the whole city instead of only people who are known or live in the center of the city, and do with more different and various styles of music, for example, but also give a voice to younger people or people who have not been heard earlier. So that's why we recreated our program as well, and then we added new shows. But it's also a bridge to the party where what I've told you about, the Niet Normaal party. They also do radio shows at Stranded as well, so that's cool. And where they tell us everything about why the party started. The Niet Normaal collective is a group of friends who know each other from the gender studies in the city, and then they started to throw parties, and they organized the party, followed up by their party praxis, and that means a lot. It's creating a safe space and environment for all the people who organize the party, who work at the party, or who visit the party. And kind of sounds the same as what Akari told us about the Strictly Silk party. So everyone who works or involves there is or female or identifies itself as a female. And so they all I'm kind of nervous about how to tell all about this, because
No problem.
I was just telling I was just thinking about this, how can I say this in word, because I always try to be more intuitive about how to communicate with people about the things I do. So I would love to, if you ask me more questions about it, and then I can follow it up immediately.
No, we're coming there. We're getting there.
Yeah.
You did great so far. You did great.
Thank you.
No, we're just taking it slow. Like, it's super chilled. I know there's people out there watching us, but actually for now it's just us in a room, just talking about how we've survived for the last few years, you know. So super chilled. I mean, I would love to also share my own experience, but Colleen, coming at you next, just to talk a little bit about the history of Pussy Party and the history of Pussy Party, how you got involved, and what was the plan with the party when you started it? What was the aim?
Okay, so we've been running since 2016. It's actually coming up on our 5th birthday. May 2016 is when we had our first jawl. So Pussy Party was founded by myself and another DJ called Fetstoki. Really, Fetstoki is kind of the origin story of Pussy Party. There was this DJ that people were talking about, and this DJ only had short mixes up on SoundCloud. And every time this DJ's friends were like, "Can't you book Fetstoki?" We're like, there's this gap. How can we know that we can trust Fetstoki to play an hour set at peak time on a Saturday when all we've seen is 15-minute SoundCloud mixes? And one night, one of Fetstoki's good friends, Fetstoki used to put mixes up called For Boobs and Honey. And I think it was Honey who came over while I was sitting at the door at Kitcheners. I work at Kitcheners on the booking side, also work on the door, which is what I'm probably infamous for. And I think it was Honey came up to me at the door and said, "But how does Fetstoki go from having these incredible 15-minute mixes on SoundCloud to holding down a dance floor on a Saturday night?" And the answer was that we needed an incubator space. We needed an incubator program. So it was a Wednesday night, monthly club night. And we began by just putting on women and queer people who were fresh DJs, giving them a chance to play on the CDJs, play to a crowd, build up their repertoire, build up their reputation, build up the club's trust in these DJs. And gradually we realized, okay, we're going to have to do something actually at the ground level. So we began Pussy Party workshops, which are free or donation-based workshops. Sorry, my cats are going crazy in the background here. Free or donation-based workshops open to women and queer people. Kitcheners generously allowed us to use their gear, so we would pop in there a couple of times a week. The motto or the philosophy became to have one brand new DJ per Pussy Party, so per month. So we've really we've supported a lot of new DJs in the beginning of their journeys. Gradually, we realized also the things keeping women and queer people away from the decks were some of the same things keeping women and queer people away from the party. Safety, physical safety, emotional safety, psychological safety, our safety as women and queer people in general, as I heard someone say, in particular at night, in particular in club spaces, in particular when we're drinking, we're trying to have a good time. So yeah, it's kind of been a journey since there. I was really interested to hear everyone talk about how COVID creates this opportunity for a different kind of reflection when you're working in a club space, in a party space, and that sense of community and in real life connection becomes so important and fundamental to what you do. When you're deprived of that connection, you do start to think, how else can we work? How else can we act? How else can we serve our community? So I was particularly interested, and maybe that's a conversation for later, but to hear about what the other collectives are doing with their online work. Pussy Party has also done some online work, and we're currently in this position of kind of taking a moment to reimagine what we can do and how best we can achieve that. Yeah, does that answer the question?
For sure. No, you guys have answered amazingly, and I'm also enjoying seeing your cat in the background. Yeah, thank you so much. What I wanted to say is that, like, I mean, you're ahead of the game here, because my next question was going to be, what are the ways that the parties or the events that you've been a part of or that you run, what are ways to create more inclusive spaces, right? So I'll give you an example. When I joined, or when we formed Future Nostalgia, I was the only girl amidst 5 guys. I was also the only one who didn't know how to DJ. And I had to learn on the go. As we started running events, I had to like force myself into learning how to play with turntables, and somebody showed me how to do it. And eventually we started creating this kind of community gig, which was, it was very, very kind of small scale and very DIY. But the point of it was to make it accessible, especially in a city like Cape Town, which is very exclusive. So there's the racial divides in Cape Town are quite intense. There are not a lot of Black and brown spaces that can be, that happen within the city itself on a regular basis. And so that was kind of like the focus, how do we make it accessible? And I think access and inclusivity are kind of, you know, they go together to some extent. So one way we did it, for an example, is we charged 20 Rand at the door. 20 Rand is about $1.50 or €1.50. And I think we kind of kept it at that for maybe €2 or $2. We kind of kept it at that for many years. Another thing we did to go against this notion of exclusivity with the DJ is we would put up the album cover, the record cover artwork as we were changing the tracks, so that anyone who was walking or sitting around could come up to us, look at the cover, engage, see what we're playing, you know, so it's not this like exclusive thing of I'm playing something and nobody's going to know what that's all about. And the last thing, which was, you know, a credit to one of the members on the collective, which was about, in terms of creating democratic space where there's no division between yourself and your audience, was to put the DJ table on the floor as the audience. So we would play alongside them. So there isn't this hierarchy of this kind of like God-like thing happening within these spaces, you know. But that's just some of the ways that we did it. And also, as I say, at the time, I was one of the few women or girls or people who are feminine who were DJing in Cape Town, especially records or vinyl or whatever. And over time, you can definitely tell that it's picked up a lot, and it's so great. I mean, across all mediums. So that's really, really cool to see that it's increasing, and also to know that you ladies are doing like workshops to help people, because I think there's a level of confidence that is needed when playing that a lot of people feel they don't have, you know, that kind of ability to just do it. So if there's anything else that you could add in terms of how you have made your spaces or your events more inclusive, what are some of the things that were important? I know creating safe space is a big one, and we're going to come back to that. But if there's anything else, Akati, I'm going to go through.
All right. It's really interesting that this thing you've mentioned about having kind of a lower stage is also something that we've happened to do, but it was not a very immediate, deliberate thought. But we do love being close to our audience. We do love the fact that you can see the work that is going on. So, you know, you see the DJ working, you see the sound engineer next to them, you see the wiring, and that kind of demystifies a lot of these things. It looks like something, you know, that can be done. When we're choosing our venues, we do try and look for places that are easily accessible by public transport. Try and look into, will this be accessible for people with disabilities? At the same time, we look for partnerships. For example, most of our domestic events, we partner with Uber, and they give us a discount code that is locked to the event. So people coming and going can pay a lower price to attend our event. And we know that Uber at least has a system for follow-up and safety, because it's not just within the space that you need, you know, safety, security. You need to be able to get to where you're going and go back home, wear your coolest outfit, your shortest skirt, your highest shoes, and still feel like I'll be able to make it back home. As far as inclusivity for our performers, like I said, we focus on women and non-binary performers, and we shout about it. We're very loud about it. And what we're trying to do with that is to put paid to this accusation that, you know, there are none, you know, that we couldn't find a woman. We don't know any queer people. And we're like, we were able to put together an event from the ground up, you know, from soup to nuts, using people from these communities that you claim cannot be found, cannot be seen. We focus on our language. We try and make sure we're keeping in touch with what is relevant to our community, and we try and have open forms of communication. So during the event, we're present there, people know our faces, and if anything is happening, you know exactly who you can go to and say, I'm having this problem, whether it's relatively minor, like, you know, the bar is clogging up and when we're waiting for our drinks, or if something unfortunate happens or you're feeling unsafe, you know exactly who to talk to, and we know what we're going to do about it. We already have a plan of action, whether it's a health concern, whether it's a safety concern, whether it's a property issue, we're ready with all that. And we try to communicate that also to our audience before. So we're saying, we're going to be at this place. These are the services that will be available for you. These are the things you'll be able to enjoy. And these are the steps that we've taken to make sure that you have a good time. As far as what we're doing this year and moving into a digital space, we're super excited because that gives us a chance to review even further and say, are we meeting older people in our community? Are we meeting younger people in our community? Are we breaking down into the subcultures and making sure that everyone kind of has a moment in the camera, whether you'll do, say, a TikTok takeover and we'll be able to connect our two audiences, whether you'll do a 45-minute podcast and be able to kind of talk about issues around, I don't know, policy or education that have a very wide-ranging effect for people in our community. And this year, again, really cool, we're also going into training because we've seen that that open environment really brings people forward and they say, this looks really cool. Is that something I could try? I mean, it even happened to me. One of the first places I touched decks was at our event. And so without giving too many details, because it's not yet public knowledge, we do have plans this year to offer opportunities for ourselves to train ourselves, pass on knowledge within the community, offer subsidized and free opportunities to interact with equipment, to try something out, to learn a new skill or follow a curiosity. And for us, those are super important ways because we know, like Colleen has said, studios, performing spaces, production spaces, for multiple reasons, are not the most accessible for people of our community. And so we're going to do the same thing we did for the club scene and say, okay, we are making our own space, and hopefully that will allow you to see that we are people who are, we have value, we have talent, we have capabilities, and that'll be able to open more doors, and we'll be able to increase our inclusivity outside our own arena. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea about the partnering up with the Uber drivers and, taking real measures to figure out how do people get to spaces, how do they leave spaces, where are some of the issues happening. For women in South Africa to walk around late at night is kind of a privilege, without worrying about what could happen. It's a real concern. And as people organizing events, these are the types of things you don't want to deal with. I mean, the parties that I run are kind of mixed gender, and anything can happen anytime. You can't predict what would go down, Lisa, I'm just going to continue that question. I'm going to go a bit deeper with you and just ask, so following on what Akati said, how are the events that you've run, like what are the let's say practical measures that have been taken to create more inclusive spaces?
Yeah, so at the music venue where I worked for, there was also the venue where the party Niet Normaal happened. So I was kind of two-faced when that night was going to happen, because I had to speak for the venue, but I also wanted to speak for the party. So what I really discovered about when the party started in 2017 is that we first had to create some exclusivity to get more and to become more inclusive, because it's just a normal music venue as every big city has. It was accessible for everyone. Everyone wanted to go out there on Saturday or Friday. So we really had to be very clear about what kind of party this is and who our targeted public is. So we had a very strict door policy. The security guard was most of the time also a woman, and there were also hosts at the door who were really talking to the people who wanted to visit the party from, hey, are you already been informed about what kind of party this is? Or are you just want to go out, you know? So so that was very hard to explain to my boss the next week. So because he said, why are you putting away people who want to buy tickets and buy beers at our bar while you're sending them away? And I said, well, there's a reason for that, because we want to create a party that is safe for the people who we create this party for, right? So that was one of the most, yeah. So creating that was kind of pressured, but also very informal for me. So that was that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think something that I've also had to struggle with, and I'm sure all of us have, is especially because our event was at a jazz club and it was very based on listening. So there was jazz, it was dub, you know, like a lot of it wasn't necessarily dance floor banging hits, you know. So finding a space in a city that caters to listening and that kind of environment where you can play anything. You can play free jazz, you can play hip hop, you can play dub, you can play whatever. And it's not focused on crowds and crowds and crowds of people coming. That was always very difficult to find a space, because most venues or spaces, all they really care about is making money at the bar and getting feet through the door. So that's why having an exclusive policy about having just say like women or queer folks and excluding, or, you know, at the start, I can understand how that could have been difficult, because at the end of the day, it's just about how much does the bar make, you know? And actually, Colleen, you've I mean, sweet Colleen, you know, you've worked at Kitchener's, which is changed significantly since I was studying in Joburg. And, you know, it used to be a space for where you could run a lot more alternative parties. But as time changed, as the city center changed, as Braamfontein changed, it became more and more and more party focused, right? And sometimes there's so many people around. How do you, you know, how do you even manage what can happen, you know, how do you, without getting security and stuff involved? If, you know, you did mention a bit some of the ways in which the event has become inclusive, but maybe you can talk a little bit about on an event night, you know, when it's busy, when there's all kinds of crowds, when, as you guys have said, sometimes there's people who just want to come and hang out. They've left their apartment and they just want to go and hang out somewhere, and you have to now explain to them, listen, it's not that kind of place, and you know, we're trying to do something else here. So yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think as my colleague said, access, so your door control becomes really important. And I don't think I'm just talking from a point of ego as a door girl for many years. So, you know, at Pussy Party, honeys are free, so women and queer people enter free, and cisgender heterosexual men are required to pay an entrance fee, ranging from 20 bucks, 30 bucks, 50 bucks, 80 bucks as the night goes on. So that's one just really concrete way of saying this is who we are catering for. If you would like to have the privilege of joining us, there's an expectation. So we've also luckily got a woman bouncer at Kitchener's, who obviously I work closely with. At Pussy Party, eventually I found the easiest thing was for me to be on the door myself, or to have other members of the team who are used to being on the door, who are used to working with the Kitchener's security team. It has to be a team effort. It can't just be one person going against anyone else. So it'll usually be me and Lebo, having the difficult conversations, sometimes provoking cisgender heterosexual men who want to come in to try and get them to tell us exactly why they have a certain perception of what they think is going to happen at Pussy Party. Sometimes includes, I want to say cajoling, or like, you know, gently trying to push someone towards understanding what we're doing. And actually, more often than not, I think if I look back on the balance, cisgender heterosexual men did understand what we were doing, did actually understand, oh, you Hans don't feel comfortable around us. oh, you Hans want to feel comfortable. Okay, maybe let me act in a different way. Okay, maybe tonight is about you. Some people, would just get upset and not want to come in. Luckily, we've had the support of Andrew, the DJ, in transforming the space. Luckily, I work there not just at Pussy Party, but as a booker and as a door person. So we've been able to create a bit more like synergy, in the whole team. We've also, so one of the things we do at Pussy Party, a practical measure, is we've had something called the Secret Garden, which is Kitcheners is kind of 4 rooms, foyer, courtyard, main bar, dance floor. So we shut the dance floor off. You can shut it off. We can shut the dance floor off, kind of disguise it with curtains and with flowers, and we call that the Secret Garden. The dance floor then is exclusively for honeys, for women and queer people. And that was just a really concrete way of allowing us to understand what we're working towards. That freedom that our community feels when they aren't being scammed on, watched, stalked, whatever the case is, touched or harassed. That freedom that we feel in the Secret Garden, that gave us a place to imagine and believe, oh, what could it be like if we were just this free all the time, if it didn't take removing a certain kind of person from the space for us to feel free. I heard you guys and the other collective talking about having the DJ on the ground. Kitchen is a pretty small space. We're not far from each other. There's not like a high stage, but we do have a DJ booth. We dress the DJ booth up for Pussy Party. We dress the entire venue up. And that becomes like a really quick way of people understanding, oh, it's not a usual night at Kitcheners. The way we dress up the booth, the way we do a little pussy shrine at the back of the booth, what we're trying to do is to elevate the DJ. We do want the DJ to look like God for this night, or a goddess, or however they choose to identify. We want to really elevate what that energy is. That's one of the quickest ways to change how the room feels, is to consider who are you putting on a pedestal, how are you empowering them, how are you supporting them. So for us, it's also always really important to think about like a drinks tab, to think about transport, to think about a meal, to think about guest list, or how many friends the DJ wants with them. What are all the things you can do around the DJ to support them to be the most empowered they can be in that moment. And an interesting upshot of coming back from COVID-19, we've just been hosting Pussy Party DJs on Thursdays at Kitcheners. So without all the trimmings of Pussy Party, just to give the girls a place to practice and keep their hands in. And with that little break, Kitcheners is kind of coming back as a space for more listening and for more alternative music, which is making our jobs a bit easier at the moment. There was a night a couple of weeks ago where it wasn't Pussy Party, it was just a party. And there was some Pussy Party DJs DJing on the main floor. And a couple of times during the night, it was only honeys on the main floor, and it felt like the Secret Garden. So because we had created a space to imagine that, this really deliberate space, the echoes of that can then, continue to resonate through the different experiences we have at the club. Which is why I think it's also been great for Pussy Party to have a home at a club that anyone can access, and to be able to work within that kind of reality. There's different kinds of parties doing different kinds of things. There's events that are more exclusive, and it's been important for us to have an event which is more open, which allows us to maybe do some of the harder work.
Yeah, I mean, I know that it's obviously, as an organizer who also might be, on a given night, I could be organizing a gig and then also having to DJ that same night, so while you're kind of running the event, you're also playing at the event, and your brain is kind of split between thinking about the set and then also thinking about like the politics, the dynamics. It's also not you can't predict everything that's going to happen, and you can't predict when a negative or positive vibe is entering a space. So obviously lineup choice is important with these kinds of things, who goes on the lineup. And I think, Akati, as you said, it's important to note that there are people, it's not this thing of we can't find anyone, because oftentimes promoters would contact me over the last 8 years and be like, oh, we need more representation for our lineup. We need a woman. So can you just come and be a woman? And you know, I think in the early days, I was like, okay, I can do that. But afterwards, I was like, do you even listen to my sets? Do you like what I play? Are you interested in the music? Because for me, the music is the first thing. Of course, creating a space that feels like home, which is what Future Nostalgia is. It's a home space. That is important, but also like the music, really. And actually, since we don't have much time, we've got 2 more questions. And actually, I can't believe I didn't ask this early on already. What do you like to play? What do you love to listen to? Well, actually, not love to listen to. What do you love to play when you're playing? What do you love to play? I'm going to start with you, Akati.
I love old school. The person who taught me how to DJ is much younger than I am, and most of my lessons were centered around, you've never heard this song before. Yeah, so my stuff is very, it kind of peaks in the early 2000s and goes backwards into the 70s. A lot of hip hop and R&B. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Lisa?
I really love music from the UK, so that is all techno and house, but also breakbeat and drum and bass and dub and all that. But I also like to combine it with some hip hop influences and sometimes some indie or guitars as well. So basically everything, as long as it got something tasteful in it.
I totally get that. Colleen, I'm going to ask you quickly.
Yeah, so yeah, man, a little bit of everything. I think I've always gravitated towards sounds that I'm just gonna, you know, for want of a better word, say feminine. I like a lot of Honey's vocals, as many Honeys and queer producers as I can get. Like a lot of house and disco also for those reasons. And I think at Pussy Party in particular, it's always my MO to play like empowering, affirming, positive messages. And we do sort of brief our DJs, like, please don't play not just abusers, but also abusive and hateful lyrics. There are a place for those things, but Pussy Party, we try and really keep the message firm and focused.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also another challenge when you're trying to have an event with a specific focus and you don't want to dictate what people should play, but you kind of like for Future Nostalgia, because we always started without a budget and it was from the ground up, it was a DIY event. It wasn't about money. I would always tell the guests who would come, they're like, please play as if you're playing to yourself in your lounge. Like if you're listening at home, and don't worry if you feel like people are gonna like disappear off the dance floor. Like let's just so that you dig out the things in your collection that you would normally never take. And I promise you, for years we managed to have events with just this idea of people digging out the things that they would never normally take to a dance floor, and also having people who weren't DJs come and play. So people who were, I don't know, people who made skateboards, or who were architects, or who were lecturers, or who were just people who just collected things. That was the thing. So I think between the 4 of us, we could definitely put our own event on together, and we should try and do this if we ever get to the same place in the world, and not on Zoom, because we really want to not be on Zoom anymore. But yeah, I mean, I love Akati. I love playing old school music because of the virtue of records. I love dub. I love hip hop. I love soul. I love UK vibes, Lisa. I love honey music, Colleen. So I think we can just make it work. Before we wrap up, I would love to get a quick word from each of you about why you think it's important that we do what we do. Sorry, Akati, I don't know if I muted out there, but why do you think it's important that we do these events?
For a multiplicity of reasons. One, because unfortunately, in a lot of spaces, we are the only people doing what we're doing, or the first or the loudest. and just, you know, keeping the fire burning and out there in public is very important. It's important to me personally because I love my community, you know. I love women, I love non-binary people, I love queer persons, and if I can do anything to kind of make them feel that love, you know, and I have the opportunity and the resources and, let's just say, the privilege to do it, then I almost feel I must do it, you know. And you know, for this to become the new normal, you know, to pick up from what Colleen said, to be able to create these places where we can imagine different, you know, we've imagined this particular thing, but we're hopeful that when people come into this place and they're able to kind of cast down the burdens of daily life and feel enlightened, taken care of, safe, they'll be able to imagine that as they go forward. And then, like she said, the ripple effect will happen in your offices, on social media, in your home. You'll be able to demand more and you'll be able to produce more. And I think that's just amazing if we have any part in that kind of revolution.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also setting the precedent for anybody who comes after. You know, it's also like paving that way so that someone who follows doesn't have to do also all that work from scratch. You know, it really does build, you know. And I would say that when I started out, there wasn't really a lot of people I could look to as role models, or there wasn't really any mentors that I could look towards. You know, I just had to do it and hope that what I was doing was the right thing. And you know, sometimes it worked out and sometimes it didn't. Lisa, I would like to ask you, why do you think it's important to do?
Yes. Well, for creating opportunities for our whole community, I guess, because what you already said, the representation of all the people in the world was not always there, especially in nightlife. So I think with a radio station, for example, we can create and organize like workshops and stuff for queer people and people who identify themselves as a woman, and give them a new we are trying to build a bridge between like the sleeping room DJ and the clubs or the festivals, to give them a place to present themselves at the radio. So I love to see all those things happen in front of myself. So that's that. Just take all the how do you say that? All the nervousness away. So I'm talking for myself as well. And creating more space for everyone who wants to do more with the music in the city.
For sure. I mean, it is really important work. I would, you know, it's good to know from your side to finally get those voice to speak about why you guys find it important, you know, like what drives you. And Colleen, I'm just gonna ask you before we wrap up.
Yeah, so I think, as my colleague said, I'm in that space. I have a certain amount of leverage in that space. It's important that I use the privileges that I have to, as you said, Tia, like fight some of the battles so that others don't have to fight them. It's really transformative for human beings to have a good night in the club. And it can really damage us when we are hurt and harmed in the club. In South Africa, it's just such a serious conversation. We're being killed and raped in the places that we work, in places that we live, you know, in the places that we consider ourselves safest. So what are we going to do? We have to do something. This is the impact that I can have. I'm going to take this space.
I want to do, you know, that it really does resonate with me in terms of everything you guys have said. And I would love to continue this conversation sometime in the future. I would love to meet all of you if we, you know, when I come to Nairobi and Netherlands, and now that I'm in Joburg, I got to see you, Colleen. But it is important, because I think we're also part of this community that it's actually very small still, you know, and it's growing. Like, it is growing, but it's important for us to keep, you know, interacting with each other and talking to each other about some of these things. Like, some great ideas have come out of this platform, and it is all about creating equality, you know, helping everybody feel like they're a person, and they're as legitimate and as allowed to be in the space as anyone else. Just to come back to the topic of this whole conversation about human rights and inclusivity, it's about the fact that some people don't realize how hostile these environments can be, you know, and how do we as DJs and organizers try to change that. So I want to thank all of you for joining me on a Friday night after a whole week of work. Thank you so much, Akati. Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you so much, Colleen. We didn't get to the question about how your platforms are moving online, but you all hinted at it. And yes, we are in a pandemic, and venues are opening and closing, and we're not sure what's happening. But I think the ultimate goal is to try and do things in real life in a safe way, hopefully soon. And you know, it's just the most uncertain time, so we don't really know what's happening. But it's good that there are these online initiatives that you've mentioned. But yes, I just wanted to thank you all for being here. And I also had to just do a quick shout out to a few of the sponsors to say thank you for having us. The University of KwaZulu-Natal, thank you. The Center for Creative Arts, the Embassy of the Netherlands, the National Institute for the Humanities and Social Sciences, the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, Hear My Voice, and Constance Say, big ups. Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Bye.